Hi guys, I'm just another guy named James, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Green Lantern Emerald Dawn 2, which is a direct follow-up to the first Emerald Dawn series, which I have a video about on my channel. I highly recommend you watch that video before this one, as a lot of events and characters and just everything basically crosses over between the two series. So I highly recommend watching that video. But yeah, honestly, the story is pretty straightforward, so we'll just hop right in to the story, which begins with Hal Jordan, who's Green Lantern, being sentenced to 90 days in the state penitentiary at maximum security for a drunk driving incident. That incident happened in the first Emerald Dawn. That's one of the big events that happened. So like I said, watch that video for a quicker overview of the story. But while Hal is on his way to prison, he hears about a bank robbery, so he runs off to stop it. And he does. He stops the robbery. And he makes it back to prison just in time to be processed. On Oa, the Green Lantern homeworld, we see that the Guardians have decided to appoint Sinestro, who is the greatest of all Green Lanterns, to finish Hal's training. Back in the state penitentiary, we see that Hal's cellmate has been killed, and Hal is being blamed. But Guy Gardner, who's a caseworker, is going to bat for Hal, defending him. And up in space, we see that Sinestro is hard at work as he's taking out some alien invaders, and after he's done fighting them off, he cleans up the mess. And on his homeworld, we also see that people seem to worship him out of fear. But before he is able to retaliate upon seeing some litter, he is whisked away by the Guardians, who appoint him as Hal's trainer. So Sinestro touches down in Hal's jail cell, where Hal tries to explain his situation, but Sinestro just makes a duplicate of Hal to stay in the prison, and Hal and Sinestro fly off to do some training. They start by breaking up an illegal trade alliance in a particularly messy fashion, but after the confrontation, we see that the leader of one of the alien factions has vowed revenge on Sinestro. Back at the prison, we see that Hal has a new cellmate who sees him enter his cell in full Green Lantern garb. Hal, being a rookie at this point, explains the whole situation to his cellmate, including his real name and how the ring works. In the mess hall, we see that someone tries to pick a fight with Hal's cellmate, so Hal breaks it up. But he realizes that the provoker of the fight is the same guy who robbed the bank. The robber recognizes Hal as Green Lantern, but doesn't say anything. That night, Sinestro comes back, and him and Hal do some more basic training, putting out fires, moving asteroids, stuff like that. Back in prison, Hal's cellmate, Willie, is shanked, but before Hal can go see him, he's taken by Sinestro, who goes back to his homeworld, where an all-out war against the Green Lanterns begins. And Sinestro has fully lost it at this point, and he starts trying to kill his own people, so Hal stops him and calls in reinforcements. A fact that even further enrages Sinestro, so the two begin a proper fight. Fight that Hal is winning until Sinestro gains control of himself, and convinces Hal to run away with him so that they won't be found guilty of the crimes on Sinestro's homeworld. On the surface of the world, the leader of the resistance, Kat Matui, claims victory. And she claims that victory only because she worked with that alien faction who swore revenge on Sinestro earlier. But the victory is claimed too early because the rest of the Green Lanterns come in, and there's one specifically, Tomar Ray, who almost immediately realizes what has happened on the world, and that Sinestro is extremely corrupt and uses his power exclusively for his own gain. And so the Guardians decide to send some giant robots to bring in Hal and Sinestro. Hal and Sinestro are camped out on an asteroid when Hal realizes he's been missing from prison for 2 days. So he and Sinestro rush back to Earth in the prison. The robber from the beginning of the story has started a breakout and a riot, with the ultimate goal being to steal Hal's ring and fully break out of the prison. But when they don't find Hal after they go to his cell, they go to his cellmate in the infirmary who's with Guy Gardner. Then Guy is taken hostage, and Hal and Sinestro arrive at the prison, where Willie fills them in. Willie is again the roommate. Meanwhile, the breakout's gotten worse, and the robber has deteriorated, killing people at random. Eventually, Hal and the robber run across each other, and Hal trades the ring for Guy's life. Sinestro then reveals himself and gets Hal's ring back. Guy fully loses it and starts going off on the robber, but Hal stops him from killing the robber. Sinestro then wipes the memory of Hal's identity from the robber's mind. Finally, the robots, the Fists of the Guardians, come in to arrest Hal and Sinestro. Sinestro runs, and the robots chase after him while Hal takes care of the riders. The robots take Sinestro to the Guardians, and Hal is teleported there as well. Hal testifies before the tribunal against Sinestro, as does Kamatui, the leader of the resistance. Sinestro is found guilty and stripped of his title, and banished to the antimatter universe of Quard. Kamatui is appointed as the Green Lantern of Sinestro's space sector, and Hal is sent back to Earth, where he finishes his sentence and is released. And the end of the story ends in exactly the same place as the first Emerald Dawn. So that's the story. Honestly, it's pretty good. Really, the only gripe I have with it is that there's no big Hal versus Sinestro fight. There's a small one in the middle, but it ends pretty quick, and it ends where they're still allied. I wanted Sinestro to be able to destroy the robots that the Guardians send after him, and Hal has to go in to beat Sinestro. I thought that would have been really cool, but what we got isn't bad. I just don't like it as much. I think so. The story's written by Keith Griffin, Somebody Jones, and it's drawn by Mark Bright with inks by Romeo Tanghal. And Mark Bright and Romeo Tanghal were on the first Emerald Dawn series, and their art is just as good on this one. And yeah, they're some of my favorite artists on Green Lantern. So yeah, that's really good. Yeah, really, like I said, my only gripe is the lack of a final fight between Hal and Sinestro. But so this story is basically the post-crisis origin of Sinestro and Hal's, enemyness. Why they're arch rivals. And I think that's good because the Sinestro story in the original Green Lantern comic happened so far back from the time of relevance to anything else that it's just hard to care. So I think that this is a really good way of bringing Sinestro into the post-crisis DC continuity, even though Sinestro's actually dead when this is written. But yeah, that's all really cool. I like that it has Kamatui become a Green Lantern at the end there, because that's something that happens in the main DC universe. Kamatui is the wife of John Stewart, who's another Green Lantern. But I'm going off on a tangent. But yeah, no, I just like this story. I don't think it's quite as good as the first one, but it's still pretty good. They do a good job nailing Hal's character, where he's taken responsibility for his actions, but he's kind of regretting it because he ended up getting 90 days in prison. That's a long time it's the maximum sentence that the judge could have given him. So Hal views that as inherently unfair, but he still serves out his punishment. And I like that dichotomy of the responsibility that Hal takes versus the actions that he wants to take. And I think it's just a good character story for Hal, because it also shows that he doesn't fully trust the Guardians or the rest of the Green Lanterns. And that distrust of everybody is an element that you will definitely see more of later in Hal Jordan's character arc. But yeah, honestly, that's about all I've got to say on Emerald Dawn 2. I mean, Green Lantern's one of my favorite characters, but in this story, honestly, he doesn't do much. Like yeah, it's more about Sinestro than it is about Hal, as weird as that is. But yeah, I mean, it's a good story. It's it's just kind of a it's I don't know, I like it, but it's weird. So yeah, that's kind of all I've got for you today. So I'm just another guy named James, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.